Canada's premiers have been on Prince Edward Island for 3 days now, talking about everything from healthcare to public safety to a national wildfire strategy. Now, for their final day in Charlottetown, Prime Minister Mark Carney is in town to listen to premiers and then speak to reporters. Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, is there, and he joins us now. All right, David, before we look at the day ahead, let's talk about what the premiers did yesterday. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the premiers did cover a lot of ground. They met mostly among themselves yesterday. They did have a dinner with the Prime Minister last night, but in their meetings yesterday, I think one of the top priorities was, in fact, health care. They were unanimous in agreeing that Prime Minister Mark Carney needs to cough up more cash for health care.
Many of our provinces are looking at a fiscal cliff in terms of funding our health care system.
And what I found really interesting as I listened to the premiers talk about how they're going to try to convince the Prime Minister to cough up that cash is they recognize that the Prime Minister is an economist. He's a former central banker. The Prime Minister's focus right now is all economy, build the economy, try to protect the economy for Trump tariffs. And so as the premiers are crafting their pitch for more health care, they're tailoring that pitch to a Prime Minister like Mark Carney.
As we think about what is happening between our country and the threat of the Trump tariffs, to me, there can be no bigger nation-building project than building up this nation's people. And that has to include healthcare, universal public access to healthcare. And so for the federal government to see this as an investment.
And yet for all that, David, I mean, Trump's threatened tariffs really are the clear and present danger in front of all of them. So looking ahead to today's meetings, what do we expect the PM and premiers to do to address that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Miranda. So you remember on Tuesday, the day after Trump made those first threats, the Prime Minister had a quick huddle with the premiers. It was a virtual huddle. The PM was in Ottawa, the premiers, of course, here in P.E.I. And in that quick huddle, the Prime Minister said to the premiers, prepare for all options. Those options could include more retaliation. Those options could include support for industries in individual provinces that are targeted by these tariffs. So I think the Prime Minister will want to hear, okay, you've had a day or so to think about this, premiers, give me some options. Now, for the premiers on their side, they are going to want to hear some details about the Prime Minister's strategy over the next 25, 26 days. That's when Trump's tariffs will kick in if there's no deal. So the premiers want to know, well, what details can you tell us about what you're going to do? On Tuesday in Ottawa, the Prime Minister used the phrase, he was going to, quote, intensify negotiations. So the premiers and reporters will ask, okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean the Prime Minister is going to get directly involved? Does he send his Canada-U.S. Trade Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, basically to camp out in Washington? Those are the kind of details the premiers will be looking for from the Prime Minister today.
Well, David, we know that Alberta's Danielle Smith and Saskatchewan's Scott Moe, they hope negotiation and resolution can resolve trade tensions. But David, it appears that some other premiers are ramping up for more confrontation. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. At least two premiers are ready to go to the mat, if you will, for the Prime Minister if the Prime Minister needs more leverage with the United States. At least two premiers sort of risen above the rest in their commitment to do that, and that is the New Democrat Premier of BC and the Conservative Premier of Ontario. They are ready to escalate things if needed.
If the Prime Minister calls British Columbia and says he needs support with some big sticks to have conversations at the table, then we'll be there.
Everything's on the table. We can't keep rolling over for Donald Trump. So that's what I believe in, standing up strong. You negotiate through strength. You don't negotiate through weakness, especially with President Trump.
So that's David Eby, that's Doug Ford leading the way. They're pretty unequivocal about where they stand. We'll see where the Prime Minister lands. The PM and the premiers, their meetings get underway here mid-morning, and we will hear from the Prime Minister. He'll speak to reporters, make a statement mid-afternoon.
All right, another busy day ahead. David, thanks so much for the update.
Thanks.
That is our chief political correspondent, David Akin, reporting from Charlottetown.